Mark in the count. The swing arm now coming back as our countdown continues.
Humanity has established a thriving colony on Mars.
All the cold breath, all the cold breath, all the cold breath.
Deep water lurking on the desolate surface of Mars.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
Because your life is almost over.
Wake up, wake up, wake up.
Deep water lurking on the desolate surface of Mars. A cosmic thriller that blurs the line between science and fiction.
You're muted.
What's up, folks? Welcome to the zombie invasion. Hello, hello, hello. Man, Adam is here. He's never here. We're never doing streams together. What's going on, man?
Oh man, not much to talk about today. What's funny is like I'm in the studio, but I'm also like we share. For anybody that doesn't know, we share StreamYard. So like this looks exactly like it was for me when I was doing my video, and I'm like, oh, should I highlight a comment? And I'm like, nope, not my show. I'm just gonna sit here and be a guest. It's really weird to be a guest, when we're doing a video, but. Yeah, no, very excited. Just watch that video again. I've watched it so many times, but every time I watch it, like I feel like I enjoy it more. It gets me more excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, just really, really sort of busy with, but excited for Space Zombies from Mars.
Awesome. And that's actually why I wanted to hang out today. And it's gonna be the Nameless Toy Company. There's three of them. There's Adam, Arlen, and Ira. Arlen and Ira apparently are infected with some kind of zombie.
They're in quarantine. Yeah. They're in quarantine with their families, I guess. So that's
Well, I wish them luck. Family first in your last days, as always.
Yeah.
So yeah, the plan is for us. I want to talk to you about this new project you've got going on, and pick your brain a little bit about it. But then, just like you did, look at you can't help it. They're infected with children. Totally familiar.
Yeah,
with the concept. You more so than me. You've got three. They've got you've got three zombies. Arlen has how many zombies?
Arlen's got two, and I think Ira's got two, if I'm not mistaken.
And I've got two zombies as well. So what are we thinking? That aside, let's do that. And just like you did on your show, I can't resist. I was inspired by you, so I quickly threw together some quick things to look at, super quick hits at not just Toy Fair, but ZoloCon and all the things. And there's like way more. But we'll talk toys for a little bit. But first, let's say hello to the folks who are in the chat. Josh Brown was told to be here from the last show over on the Highly Articulated channel. Don't know if folks are familiar. And so he's a good astronaut and followed orders. What's up, man? Happy Sundat and Sunday to you all. What's up, Blake? I know that's probably killer when you type that in. You're like, yeah. But
as soon as you send it, you always read it and you go, oh, I didn't catch it.
It's all right. Thanos Copter is here. Hello. Always helping us with the links. Ray Paz is here. What's up, sir? The Rebel Bassist 92. Dude, I think I'm the Rebel Bassist 76 in that case. Although my bass is 68. So I'll be the Rebel Bassist 68. We'll get together. We'll do a dual bass thing that's way better than the many dual bass projects out there. Ostradamus Toys, hello, sir. I feel real bad that I just glossed over this and didn't acknowledge the Tron reference. Respect. Hello again. Let's see. Yeah. I know. Yeah, we met real briefly before this. Chris Bouchard, hello, sir. Larry's Geeky World is here. Great to see you. Arlen, hello. There's the 3 zombies. Take care. They pass germs and zombie viruses pretty quickly. Game Quest, hello. Brian Brink is here. Yes, looking forward to these astronauts for sure. Just the astronauts? What about the zombies? Like it's in the name. See, there you go. Careful, dude. Careful. Anyways, Gabriel, hello. Happy Sunday. Look, yeah. Sorry, I was rubbing it in. What's up, Trevor? Good to see you. Hey, look at this guy. I think Trevor needs some space zombies to take photos of. Chris B is here. A different Chris B. There's a Christopher Bouchard and a Chris B. What is going on? So pumped for space zombies? Zombie apocalypse? Za?
Pizza? He's talking about his dinner?
Fellow 7, yes, we're so young. Yes. And it's on. Let's do it. See, this is well played, sir. Hold on. Yes. No AI, just us. And hello, Chicken George. Is that your son's new YouTube alias? Because it should be.
No, I don't think, like, the only one of my kids that's like really on YouTube is the 9-year-old, but I don't think she's. I mean, she'd get in trouble if she had like an actual login. I think she just uses my wife's.
She's been on camera.
Yeah, I know,
but camera.
She's still 9 though. It's like you gotta kind of hold out and protect them as long as you can, I think, right? So
you should. That's a smart move for sure. I glitched out there for a second, and I'm thinking the zombies are all here.
Coming.
All right, dude. Let's go ahead and talk about space zombies, but there's that URL down there, and I'll put in the links. There aren't a ton of links, except probably the most important link, which will be over on Kickstarter, which is the but you know what? Those Kickstarter things are so long.
I know.
And let me quickly.
The weird thing is when you copy it, like you paste it and it's that big long thing. But if you go Kickstarter.com/Space Zombies for Mars, I think it gets you there. Which is
I'll do you one better. In the chat right now, you will see go to bit.ly/backspace zombies. And I believe that should work. I should have double checked it before I did, but I believe it does. Because that's what I created to get people there. Yes, go. Easy. No excuse. You just have to remember that bit.ly thing. Bit.ly/backspace zombies. Go. Let me just ask you in general before we get started. How are you? Because aside from the zombie apocalypse, I know I've seen you when you've had a hand in Kickstarters. I know they can be stressful.
Yeah.
How are you holding up, friend?
I'm doing well. I feel like with this one, I've actually like hit my stride. We launched it at a time that made sense for my mental health. I didn't look at it until the next day.
Good.
And I don't look at it. I've now learned to rely on the email that Kickstarter sends. And I've said this, and I'll probably say this, 31 more times between now and the end of March, but going and sort of looking at it almost feels like rereading a term paper after you submitted it, where like you can't do anything. So, don't get too, stressed out about it.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I'm sleep deprived because of, just the hours that I sort of stared at it beforehand. But I feel really good about it. I mean, the Kickstarter, I think the campaign looks good. I think the offering is phenomenal. I think the price points are, good value for money. And now it's kind of the fun part, and now it's, mixed with anxious excitement. But Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. And
Good.
it's because because it's my company with Arlen and Ira. Um, maybe I'm a little bit stressed out, for myself, but I'm less stressed about like what somebody else needs from me. It's like my
Right.
own self-induced
Yeah.
stress. It's not like so it's a little bit different this time around, but like I said, I feel more comfortable this time than even like the Animal Wars of the Kingdom Primal Series 2 one.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it's fun.
The
I'm excited.
beauty of agency, right? Like you have a lot
Mhm.
more control over this one. You can turn it off, you can turn it on at the end of the day. Even if things aren't perfect, you understand why they are for the
Mhm.
most part. So that's cool. And I think it's great. You mentioned earlier on your channel, like some of the lessons you learned from doing the
Yep.
AWOC one.
Mhm.
One of the big ones that you noted that I would just like to bring up front is you mentioned the backer kit and the sort of all-in package.
Mhm.
And I love that you're essentially you want to share with folks what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so for the Animal Wars of the Kingdom Kickstarter, which had like so many different bucks and so many different like waves of figures, we offered an all-in package like from day one,
Yep.
that confused people long after the Kickstarter was even done. People didn't quite
Mhm.
understand what it was. And so now people are like, are you going to have an all-in package that includes everything that could get unlocked? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Not until we have more of the things unlocked.
Right.
Because it just created more confusion, and how it was going to work and what you would get in that package and all that kind of stuff. If it didn't fund, was confusing. Um so I just thought, what, when we start getting into stretch goals, I can put that all in at any point. I
Yep.
can add it, but you can't really subtract it. Like
Right.
you can't, there's no backsies in
Right.
Kickstarter. So as soon as you put it in there, it's locked in. And so, I have the list of all the further reward tiers that we can do, with all the different figures that still need to be unlocked, and then that equivalent of like the epic all in, reward tier bundle, which I could pull the trigger on it tomorrow if I wanted to, but I'm going to wait till we sort of get into the stretch goals, and then it
Yep.
seems a lot more attainable, and hopefully less explanation on my part.
100%. That's why, like for some context, as you guys started, as Spiro launched the Kickstarter, I know we shouldn't tie these two things together, but there's a connection there.
There's a lot of connections.
There wasn't the plan of what you guys are doing now as you're sort of launching the
No,
like,
yeah.
hey, you've booked your these visits to different channels to make sure the
Mhm.
word's out there as much as possible. You did kind of this nice gradual build up, like almost like a
Mhm.
countdown to it on Instagram. So you took those lessons, which was
Mhm.
awesome.
Mhm.
But when that AWOC thing happened, and I wasn't paying close attention to the behind the scenes, obviously, and then you guys launched it. And I, as someone who has been following it and loves the brand,
Mhm.
was like, holy, this is overwhelming. Like,
Mhm.
even as that, hence, I couldn't help it. I was like, hey guys, you want some help? Hey, you want to help
Yeah.
get the word out? And that was, I couldn't help it. And then it was just like, hey, could we reorganize a page a little? And so I
Mhm.
didn't mean to put stress on you and Jason and you.
Yeah.
But I will say you've cleaned it up, man. Seriously. The Kickstarter looks great. We'll get into it in a second. Let's say a couple quick hellos and a couple quick comments. Oh, and I want to say you heard it from Adam, folks. Your ability to back this has a direct impact on his mental health.
Yes.
And so do it. And Josh Brown, if you guys aren't familiar, he says, Adam, I need more nervous white energy.
Yeah.
If you missed that Unparalleled Universe stream, every toy company needs a nervous white guy. And so bring
Yeah,
it.
I'm our nervous
And
white.
if you don't have no context for that and that makes you uncomfortable, good. Okay, next.
Yeah.
Solo
It's supposed
Sinners.
to, I guess.
Solo Sitter says, hey, what's up? We've got, hey, Largo and Vaz, who we will definitely talk about at the end, who was here recently. We'll talk about at the end because there's some AWOC things happening today. And I will even lessen my chances of winning by sharing the information with folks at the end of the show. Okay, let's talk space zombies, man. You and company have put together, you and the Nameless Toy Company have put together a dope. You've put together a dope thing, but I can't find it here on my, oh, there it is. Duh. Okay, so let's go over here. I was like, there's the dope thing that you all put together that I was referring to. The Kickstarter. So let's check it out, folks. I'm thinking that you will have plenty of opportunities to hear about every single item and how it all works. So I'm going to try my best to keep it as bare bones as possible. And I would love to talk a lot more about sort of the idea of the toy line and get people excited that way about both lore and music. But let's do the obligatory walkthrough of the campaign. There is this video which you saw at the beginning of this show. I will say shout out to whoever made the decision to include the zombie flying through space. That was totally action figure. And you see like the articulation cuts rather than try to make it realistic.
Yeah, that was Ryan Steele, a friend of Arlen's, who sort of does these videos professionally. Arlen reached out and said, would you be interested in helping us out with this little project that we're working on? So Arlen sent him like the renders, like actually the like STL files, I think, like the functioning, you know, images for the action figures. And then he was able to take that, and then the soundtrack, he had access to like the soundtrack. So all the music and sort of noises and things that you hear in there is from the soundtrack. And with very little direction from anybody, he came back with what was, you know, 99% that video, and said, oh, I want to tweak this and I want to tweak this. Is there anything that you guys would change? And I think we requested he change one detail, like literally one little thing, and we were like, but it's awesome. It's like it's exactly what we want. Detail?
You mentioned that last night. I'm curious.
Yeah, so in the when you're sort of floating through the space at the beginning, and you can see like kind of in blood, like written on one of the panels, it says "Save yourself, too late." It said something different before.
Got it.
And we just said, what if it said this instead? So it was literally like not like we didn't change the thing at all. It was just a little sort of nondescript, nothing detail that most people are probably not even going to barely notice.
But I assume things like that have some storytelling capabilities in terms of maybe the way you phrased it, maybe.
No, not really. I mean, it seemed like a, you know, if you're sort of bleeding out, you know, it seemed like something that you would write. It was more concise and to the point than some of the other options that we had to sort of scratch on there. So it just kind of, and we actually gave him a couple options, and that is the one that he picked, and put it on there and sent it back to us. And we were like, yep, no more changes. This is awesome.
Okay. So what I heard is that was a friend of Arlen's, you know, clearly a creative person who works in that field of doing videos and everything. I will just say it seems like that's behind the spirit of this. There's like definitely a art forward, a, you know, in creativity forward kind of vibe to this thing, which I like a lot. And then there's also fun. I mean, it's communicated in the logo type, the image that we're seeing here on the screen. It's like, yes, it's a serious toy line, right? But it's not a serious toy line.
We're serious business people.
Yes. Yeah. So I dig that, and I love the creativity, and again, the collaboration. So you're Arlen's collaborating with his buddy to do the video. The logo, folks haven't heard, is also a collaboration with Jason. That's Jason Bienvenu. Logo treatment for Space Zombies from Mars, which is, I think, perfect. It's kitschy, it's horror, it's 60s like exploitation, you know, kind of zombie / sci-fi. And it screams like it's super dynamic. It's not, you know, static. And then the artwork. So Ray is talking about the comic, which is a thing that folks can back, and it's sort of in development. He's loving the art. Oh, let me get you. That's bad. That's bad form. Y'all look at the guest. But talk to me about the art here. Who actually did this? Is this Arlen's work, or is this?
Yeah, so Arlen is not only a fantastic sculptor and musician, but like before he was professionally sculpting action figures, he made guitars and actually taught people how to make guitars. But he's a great artist as well in terms of like pencil work and like drawing, right?
Yep.
So he's drawn like several pages already that are sort of like certain specific pages that are sort of full of lore, but sort
like
of
key
distilled
moments
down,
in
key
the
moments.
story, right?
Yeah. And so funding permitting, we will actually have another artist do the other pages that Arlen doesn't do, because that frees Arlen up to do sculpting stuff and figure stuff. And we have a few in mind that would be like really fun. We kind of have some Canadian artists in mind to like keep it Canadian.
Nice.
And
keep it as far away from here as you want. I totally understand. It's like the
for now,
zombie
at least for the next few years, maybe that'll be.
Sorry if I lost all the U.S. viewers, but
yeah,
facts.
But yeah, I mean, we're just we're sort of in early stages for the comic book, and it's an action figure line that happens to have a comic book and a soundtrack to go with it. So the figures are the most important part. And when people are like, "Oh, do you have like who's doing the art?" What's like, and we're like, "Well, we're doing the comic book, but we're like, let's fund the toy line first, because otherwise, it doesn't really make any sense."
No, it totally that's all those things. And we'll definitely come back to the sort of the creative aspect of it. I do want to just, folks are saying in general, they love the sci-fi, love sci-fi of it all, and love it's a very creative idea. Ray loves the artwork. Arlen clearly super talented. And so that's dope. But I know that he's has his hand in the music, the figures, and
he's also
at a certain point got to delegate.
He's not a comic book artist. So like comic book artists, for anybody that sort of is aware, like they're banging out pages like super fast. Like really good comic book artists are really efficient and fast.
Yeah.
Arlen is not a comic book artist. And so he's like putting probably way more time into each page than a comic book artist would. So it really comes down to like, I mean, if you want to wait a few years to get the comic book, I'm sure we can have Arlen do it all.
He's got kids too. Come on,
it would be
folks.
cost effective to do it that way too, because he doesn't bill us for his hours like comic book artists do. But as I said, he's gonna do a bunch of pages, and it'll all make sense, and we'll probably elaborate on it before the end of the Kickstarter campaign, like what pages he's doing. I kind of mentioned it a little bit in my video this morning that like within the comic book there's like a magazine, and there's excerpts out of this magazine that are that are sort of full of exposition, and they kind of tell you who all the characters and things are. And Arlen has already done those pages, and those will remain, so that basically you'll have people kind of reading these pages, kind of like a weird meta, media within media thing.
Think Watchmen, folks.
A little bit, yeah. And there's there's another element that we kind of want to add to that too. Given the time and given the space to kind of do it, but for now it's Arlen's got, like I said, a few pages done, and we have our colorist lined up. He's on board. So it's really just a matter of who's going to do, pencils for the other pages, and Arlen could do it. We have the script for all 32 pages.
Yeah. So
it's really pretty straightforward once we really get going with it. But yeah, that's all words. Like it's not scribbled in there.
Yeah, I think it's worth taking a look. It gives you the vibe of what's going on. And yeah, no, I think it's really fantastic. I appreciate his artwork too. And I appreciate the thought of what you just shared. Like if you can, do illustrations, which is fantastic, but if you're doing serial images and serial storytelling, it's a completely different art form. And at the end of the day, dude also has a job. So just, folks, like, please recognize this stuff takes a lot of work. And All right. That said, let's go ahead and look at the campaign. real quick. So I'm gonna do a super quick here, shout out Kelowna. Just a really quick take a look at the goal is 117,512, and I don't remember. I lost track if that number is Canadian or US.
That's the
Do
US
you
number.
know?
It's 178,000 Canadian. And then
Got
because
it.
our Kickstarter has to be run in Canadian dollars because the
Right.
bank that they're sending the check to is Canadian dollars, you have to adjust your currency to sort of whatever you want. But yeah, we kind of look at it usually in US dollars because that's kind of the currency that everybody knows. I don't know why Kickstarter can't kind of get on board there. I suspect there's like weird reasons
illegal
with
financial thing.
borders. Like I think Kickstarter probably pays us from Canada to Canada when they actually issue, you know, the payment, because you can't do Kickstarter in every country. So I think they probably have an office in every country that kind of administers. And I don't know, probably just legality of how that stuff works. But you can change your currency, and like, you know, you're looking at right there, that's US dollars. So
there you go, folks. We got 29 days to go. It technically launched on March 1st, but March 1st UTC time, because Adam was going human universal when he set that up. I shared with you my guess when you said you're going to be cryptic about the time. I totally thought it was going to be like 321, like 321 on March 1st, 3-1. But anyway, we've got some way to go, but there's plenty of time, 29 days. But tell folks, like, don't be zombies. Just back it, be an astronaut, back it like soon. Let's get
boldly
there.
Go, right?
Boldly go. And I am selfish because I have backed it, but most of what I want, folks, is behind. It's in the bottom. So we got to unlock some stuff. There's some really great stuff all over the place, but so in it, you'll hear about the company, you'll hear about the story, all the basic sort of stuff. Here's Adam desperately making a plea that you read something. And then we go here. See. This is the beginning of the lore. This sort of sets it up. The mission, the Red Dust 2, the 2 is probably pretty important if you follow sort of space things, because, you know, there's like the Apollo 1, there's the Apollo 2. So people can read this as we're talking, but essentially at some point in the 1960s in a world that is very much like ours, right? So I'm assuming major historical touchstones, Cold War, all of that exists. The United States of America sends a mission called the Red Dust mission to try and colonize, or maybe explore first with the intent to colonize Mars.
Yeah,
I mean, there so far.
Yeah.
Okay. But then something happens and we lose touch essentially, and the mission is assumed a failure, with all the parties involved missing or dead, presumed dead. Just story wise, because, you know, otherwise you and I are going to have to make a bunch of YouTube videos where we break down the story and guess. Let's just get it out of the way. How big of a mission are we talking? Is this like NASA three astronauts sent up, or was there more?
No, there's going to be more. I mean, this is a colonizing mission. So you've got you know, as much as there's like kind of touch points in this world feels very familiar in terms of what we know of like the space race from the 1960s and stuff like that. You know, you can kind of assume that if there's you know, with divisions within the mission, you know, you got the military, the science, the medical, and the engineers, you know, there's multiple of each. There wasn't sort of one per suit color. It's not an away team from Star Trek where you get one per shirt color. You know,
is it safe to assume there are plenty of red shirts though?
Yeah, well, they start off that way. Yeah, no, the red shirts are the retro ones, and there's sort of no there's no divisions within that mission. They're all just red shirt guys.
Yeah.
Presumed dead. So I guess it's like on brand.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so they go up, they get lost. Fast forward to the 1990s is what I heard. When Brick was graduating 8th grade, then going to college. And so presumably, again, grunge is on the radio. Alternative is the thing. They say, you know, we got to go figure out what happened. They send up, or actually, is it to figure it out? Or is it just, we know what happened. They're dead. We're just going on our second mission to try again.
Yeah, I mean, it's been long enough, and it's sort of like, you know, there's been nothing, there's been no recovery. They can't sort of locate the mission.
Yep.
So this is really just a second Red Dust mission with, the
Yep.
intention again is to sort of set up and colonize Mars. So
Mhm.
this is sort of the exploratory sort of first wave, although it's the second mission, which is why they go with different divisions, but they're not, it's not just a military mission. They're not just going to like save someone and sort of extract them. They're going with engineers and doctors and scientists, and so there's sort of a secondary aspect of like, if you figure out on the way what happened to Red Dust 1, please let us know.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's the setup. And then Red Dust 2 goes up there, and the story ensues, right? Calamity ensues, all of that good stuff. Cool. Let's get into the campaign. There are definitely folks, I'm starring your questions. We'll definitely get to them later. So I'm not ignoring you. And speaking of not ignoring, I did want to acknowledge, I brought it up real quick, but Allison Troy, Retro Toy Princess, member for 12 months. Thank you so much. W with 2 big O's and a T. Whoop, whoop. I know that showed up on yours too. Was it 16 months? So
16 months. I was like, that's like 12 months longer than I thought it'd been.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
And then there was somebody who wanted to say specifically hello to you. Toyomic Displays saying, what's up?
What's going on?
Hello, hello.
Good to have you.
We got Frankie here, and let's see. So there are definitely some things that people are bringing up. Let's go ahead, and before we start off going into the campaign, let's do some housekeeping. Since people are bringing it up now, let's talk about goals. Okay, before we get into the fun stuff of the stories and stuff, let's get the business stuff. There's a couple questions here,
and really fun stuff.
Yeah, and I'm going to show a couple before you sort of break down the answer. So first off, there's a question from Josh Brown, or not the comment, the statement. That's why the goal is so low. So I'm going to turn that into a question. If you could address, why is the goal so low? In addition, the last couple of Kickstarters, toy Kickstarters that we paid attention to, maybe even ones that we've been involved in, have been really benefited, sort of. And I'm say the sort of with an asterisk.
Yeah.
From, say, like a big retailer like a BBTS or other stores who are like, hey, I'll back and then contribute the money, and that later when I get the figures, I will sell them as a retailer. But as you've pointed out, and people are asking here, so let's go ahead and address that up front. Like Jeff Morris is asking, are you trying to work with BBTS, Big Bad Toy Store? These look great. I would think they would want to invest. So there's that piece of it. And then people have sort of like addressed things like that, like saying there will be no bump, etc. So could you talk about that? What that means in terms of like people asking, hey, are you helping out? Are the retailers going to make this available? And then just tell us what your solution and thinking is behind that part.
Yeah. So making toys is expensive. There's no two ways about it. Like, and anybody that is making toys will agree to that. Like there's nobody making toys, cheaper than anybody else. Like everybody's got to pay a bunch of money to make them. So you get your quotes, you figure out how much tooling you're going to need, you figure out, which factory you're going to work with and which, project manager you're going to work with. And you sort of go through all those steps to figure out exactly how much it's going to cost to make the toys that you want to make. Or you should before you get to the Kickstarter phase. So we figured out how much money we basically needed to make in order to, do all of our test shots, do our samples, get our steel molds cut, produce the figures and ship them over here, because you can't really do anything until you can get these things in hand to sort of, distribute to collectors. So we got all of our numbers. We sort of lined all that stuff up and figured out how much we needed to make sort of during the Kickstarter. And then, like you said, like I've noticed big bumps by retailers in a lot, specifically in action figure Kickstarters recently. And what I've noticed is there's also sort of like a weird kind of troubling belief by some collectors that like retailers kind of have to do that. People are like, well, we'll just wait for the retailer numbers to come in and like push this over the line. the unfortunate side of that is that Kickstarter takes a percentage.
Yep.
Retailers are paying wholesale prices, not the same prices as what you're paying on Kickstarter here. So you're losing a lot of margin.
Yep.
When you have a retailer back your Kickstarter. I mean, you're losing margin just by doing it on Kickstarter. But then you kind of, you double down when a retailer backs it. So what we did instead of that, knowing that there would be retailers that would want to be a part of this, I think it was Jeff Morris that said, like, these are awesome retailers are going to want to be involved. And having the connections that, Arlen and I have to various retailers, we actually did reach out to retailers and we said, hey, if this line existed, would you want to pre-order them? And if so, how many units would you want? Like, what would your sort of financial stake in this potentially be? So they got back to us and they said, here's what we would give you, today if we could get these. And so we said, okay, would you be comfortable kind of agreeing to that and effectively doing a pre-order on April 1st, assuming this funds for that amount? And they said, absolutely. Like, we're good to go. Like, we're locked in.
A wholesaler pre-order.
Right. A wholesaler pre-order. And so we got numbers from retailers, and those numbers were pretty good. And what we did is just subtracted those numbers off of our funding goal. So we basically kind of got like a pre-bump almost, where instead of the Kickstarter, covering all of our costs for everything that we need to make, it sort of covers the cost less what the retailers are going to be, kicking in at the end if it funds. What that means, though, is that this is truly an organic crowd-funded Kickstarter. That this does not become a reality unless collectors are into it and collectors support it and collectors back it during the Kickstarter period. To that end, this is the cheapest you're going to get these figures. So the astronauts, I'm jumping ahead, I know, but the astronauts are $40. The zombies are $25. The Kickstarter exclusive is $30. The Kickstarter exclusive will not be available through the online retailers. I mean, unless they buy them through the Kickstarter at the normal price. So I don't know what they would be at retail. But the zombies at retail are like 28, and the astronauts at retail will be 45. So if you buy one,
that's your MSRP.
That's the MSRP. So if you buy an astronaut during the Kickstarter, you're paying $40. If you wait and order it from an online retailer, you're looking at $45. So right off the jump, you're saving $5 by doing it through the Kickstarter. And if you buy more than one, you're going to end up paying even less. So the way that I kind of broke it down is like, if you get 2 astronauts, you're basically getting an additional $1 off. So they're like $39. If you get 4, you're paying like $38 per astronaut. And then if you do one of the all-in bundles, that's going to be the best value, unit wise. So we wanted to make it so that it was, appealing to backers in terms of, you are saving a little bit of money by backing it. We make more of your dollar if you back it through the Kickstarter than if you say pre-order it through, one of the online retailers. So it's, we wanted to kind of reciprocate that a little bit too.
No, that totally makes sense. And I understand some of the logic from the consumer end. I think some people, they get skittish. They've heard all sorts of things about Kickstarters. There's this vibe of like, oh, it takes forever. Like, oh, if I back early, I've heard that. The other piece is when you're dealing with retailers like Big Bad Toy Store, which is like a clear, like, key institution for toy buying.
They're a juggernaut. I mean, like, I mean, I think it's, I mean, I haven't said it like overtly, but like Big Bad Toy Store is in, and they're in a big way. Like they want this, and they wanted to launch it, on Saturday. And I was like, can you please hold off a few days so that we can get, a little bit of this sort of done before you guys kind of jump in.
So I think what I was just gonna sort of finish off where, like, folks are like, well, if I buy their Big Bad, then I can cancel, and there's all that sort of like shenanigans. And it's like, we totally get that, folks. I get that from a sort of toy buying perspective, but if I were to put myself in your guys' shoes, there's this feeling like we have to commit to pay these bills. So we can't like count on people that potential liability of people saying, no, just kidding, we're not gonna give you the money that we planned. So this is the reality. And I know people struggle with the concept sometimes, but just recognize that like these guys they're not sitting on a bunch of cash where that they can just invest the money themselves, which is
I wish
why
we were. I wish we had the
that's
money
why
to just do this.
yeah,
Because the irony is that like if we had the money, we would, because we feel
yeah,
confident
it would
about
be a
it,
no. Yep.
and retailers are like confident about it too, and they
Yep.
probably know better than us because we're just nerds that want what we're making. That's you make what you think is cool. But the response from online retailers was such that I was like, okay, we're good. Like we've got something here.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's just we just wanted it to be like an organic, like I said, like an actual crowdfunded thing, not
Yep.
kind of put the responsibility on the retailers and then sort of put the financial burden on them. And then like you said, like I know that a lot of people, your money's stretched pretty thin. You're thinking, okay, well, I'll pre-order it through somewhere like Big Bad Toy Store where I don't have to pay until it ships. We have to pay before it ships. That's just sort of the unfortunate reality of how this works, is like a lot of the money is up front. We don't get to say to the factory, hey, can you make these? And then we'll pay you back when you know, people buy them. We gotta cough up like, April 1st, they're going to be like, all right, send us that check.
So I think people are following. I think again, because as you've laid out, and I think you've thought about it, given you and I obviously pay attention, and you and I pay attention to the action figure buying kind of like landscape and the indie toy thing. So you've seen the trends. And so at the end of the day, as Josh Brown points out, it's a great way to do it, but we got to change the community mindset again, because there has been this sort of like consumer training that's happened as a result of the last couple of big Kickstarters. And Thanos thinks it's a smart move and hopes that people realize the bump already happened, which is that's the communication piece. I think there's also something to be said about like in this, especially in the indie toy space, where when folks do things the first time, you're like, cool, good for you. Just recognize that that might not be the model to continue, even though we may have been a part of people doing things one of the first times, but like the all-ins or like some of that kind of stuff. So, and then this is something I don't want you to address this because I think it puts you in a weird position. I will just say, for me as an independent, not involved in this, and just as a toy buyer, Josh is saying, I would think BBTS should wait until after the campaign. Will they poach potential? They will poach potential backers, right? So I'll speak to this. This is not Adam speaking, but I always wondered about that with AWOC too. When we were doing that, I'm just like, oh, but unless there's some kind of like direct guarantee that for every pre-sale they get means, a certain amount, and there's all these things of like wholesale cost versus actual, what they're going to be backing for, all these kinds of things. There is that confusion. And I think Josh is right to name that. It makes it a little bit weird. So if we're just like, this is the place you go, and as you've said, this is the cheapest price, go check it out. So if it's okay for you, I'm not going to necessarily, we don't need to go over the details, I think, of like, hey, like this is the bundles, this is all that. Let's do a quick look at the figures, because let's just talk about how dope these things are, and some of the ideas behind them. Darth Primus completely agrees with me, because these figures are awesome, right? He says, I'm down for some figures. These are awesome. I will back them. Let's go. So, and because the reality is, as Travis points out, backer number 11.
You blew it, Trav.
He's right. You're going to be making the tour. So if you want to hear all about the details, go check out his channel, go. And there'll be, I'm assuming, like some messaging on where all the shows will be. Did you put together like a playlist or something?
Yeah. So we're going to have a playlist. There's going to be an update in the Kickstarter that's going to have, that's going to get updated, as regularly as I can, where like, here's the videos that we've done, and here's the links, here's the channels where we're going to do future videos, check us out. If you got questions, come ask. But the comment section is open on the Kickstarter. I'm available, whether it's through Highly Articulated on YouTube or on Instagram, and then the T.N.T. Nameless Toy Company on Instagram. Lots of people messaging me there as well. And we're trying to be super transparent about this. Like I said, like telling people like we already have backing from retailers, so don't expect there to be a retail bump. It's in Canadian dollars, so make sure you're looking at the right currency when you're trying to decide what you might like to pick up. Toys are expensive to make, so we're not making any money off this Kickstarter. Like the funding goal is literally to get these into people's hands, and then hopefully that facilitates the next one, the next wave, the next line.
Cool.
This is the Nameless Toy Company. This isn't the Space Zombies from Mars toy company, so we do want to do more stuff. Arlen's got other ideas, other lines. Love that. There's sort of other stories within this universe. We've kind of named this universe the Nameless Universe, which kind of gives it an actual name. So it's not our universe, it's the Nameless Universe. We get to sort of set the rules and decide
Love it.
whether people's blood boils in space or whether they freeze to death. That was a conversation on another video. Like, well, what causes you to die in space? It was like, I don't know, all of the above, maybe.
Okay, I promise you I will not ask you any of those questions, but not that they're bad questions. Just go check out those other podcasts where you guys can talk all about that. But let's really quickly take a look at the figures and let's break down story-wise. First off, there's a couple of different factions of astronauts that end up going on the Red Dust 2 mission in the 90s. And then remember the distinction between Red Dust 1 and Red Dust 2, because there are some characters that pop up, presumably that had some kind of connection to that Red Dust 1 mission. So can you break down, let's just, as the figures come up, we'll talk about the different factions. But here we've got Guy Garrison is presumably yours. Well, actually, who's Guy Garrison?
So Guy Garrison is the commander of the mission. He's the leader of the group. He is a military veteran. He's been around for a long time, highly respected strategist and sort of commander. He is the leader of the military division within the mission as well. He's got his classified files there. So he's his sort of secondary task is to figure out what happened to the first mission. There's some, there's talk in back rooms of, Spike Spectre, the leader of the first mission, maybe having his own motives for wanting to lead the mission. So Guy Garrison's, there's some stuff going on, under in hushed terms. Yeah.
So when they send him on the mission, they get a military guy and they say, hey, listen, the auspices of this mission, or we're going under the auspices of colonizing. Back room, here's your real mission kind of thing. Or, hey, there's something that we want you to look out for while you're there.
There's something we want you to look out for. Yeah, there's some information that we have that may or may not be true about Spike Spectre that may play into why, Red Dust 1 disappeared.
Okay. I will say guns. I remember you mentioning you mentioned that you had talked about the sort of like things in progress, and you had a very specific note for them about weapons. Can you just share that before we quickly move on?
So there were some different weapons before, and in my personal opinion, they were too accurate. They were too modern, too accurate, and not sort of sci-fi enough and not fun enough. Nice. And my opinion was that, like, if people want to put realistic real world weapons into the hands of these figures, you absolutely can, because you've got, a whole bunch of companies that make weapons packs and weapon sets. You've got G.I. Joe Classified. You've probably got tons of extra guns, tons of extra knives, tons of extra whatever. So, I said, can we make them a little more sci-fi? And Arlen came back with, I think he nailed it. He came back with what may or may not be virtually the alien pulse rifle.
On that note, thank you very much, man. It's actually warm in here, but like I love to commit to a bit, but this is my Nostromo, crew jacket. But let me get into this, the proper attire here, because it's getting warmer in here. But yeah, no, the alien reference is perfect. That's the part of what I thought about. And let's do this. Let's do the AWOC talk thing that you and I famously do. Let's talk about some of the influences, because I see Alien in here. I see definitely some G.I. Joe action adventure, maybe some adventure team. On that note, we've got Largo asking the beautiful, important questions. Things like, hey, back in the 60s, 70s, like, GI Joe Adventure Force, is that what they're called?
Action
Anyway.
Force. Or no,
Well,
Action
yeah,
Force
but
was UK.
yeah, so it was like the Adventure Team.
Mhm.
And then there were things like Major Matt Mason over at Mattel, where there was
Mhm.
like, let's go to space. That famously
I
sort
don't
of
know
ties.
about Matt Mason. That's not one that
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Arlen's mentioned. But I do know that there's definitely that not alien pulse rifle aside. There's definitely references at least to like the face sculpts from a few different toy lines, like specific figures that Arlen had as a kid, or
Nice.
just touch points.
Love that.
Like I think Guy Garrison specifically, if I remember correctly, was from Centurions.
Oh,
There
cool.
was
Yeah.
there was a character that had a very similar kind of mustached face.
It was the sea guy, and I'm forgetting the guy in green. It wasn't Jake the Earth guy, and it wasn't the air guy. Anyways,
Yeah.
so that's cool. So some of that stuff, like Centurion, some of that is bleeding its way in. I'm
Yeah.
assuming 60s kind of kitsch sci-fi.
It's
even
almost
like
I mean, I would love for it to be like, yeah, that it was pulled from like this 60s reference influenced the retro one, and this 90s one, but it's really just Arlen's kind of cherry picked details and then kind of mashed them all up and sort of turned it all around and sort of put it out here. Arlen and I are the same age, we're in our 40s, and it's sort of like all the things that most collectors know kind of influenced us as well. So there's sort of all that stuff is in there. And we've had this conversation.
Space dash. Sorry, real quick.
Exactly.
Including the space mustache. Yeah.
And we've had this conversation with Jason where there's like, it's hard to do something that's truly original. You're going to pull bits and pieces that are going to feel familiar, even if it wasn't the intended, like even if the reference for you is there, it might not have been for us. So actually Oz asked that about the logo, the Space Zombies from Mars logo, whether it was influenced from that video game, and the answer I got back was no, I don't know that video game.
But so if you're in the zeitgeist,
I was just going to say the zeitgeist of all of this is going to feel familiar because, like I said, we're using kind of touch points of like the space race, and everything's kind of through the lens of what if some of these sci-fi things weren't science fiction but science fact. This is like the world that these people inhabit. They are inhibited by some of these things, but they inhabit this world. So yeah, like zombies, like we didn't invent zombies,
right?
And these zombies will sort of look and move similar to the way we've seen zombies, but the origin is a little bit different, and we're not giving that one away just yet, but yeah.
Definitely not. Okay, so you've got the spacing, and again, I just feel like we see the touchstones, and I think this is important. It's similar to AWOC, where it's like, oh, you look at them and you might think Planet of the Apes, you might think Thundercats. Yeah. I look at this, I might think Alien, I might think, or Alien/Aliens. I might think again G.I. Joe, Major Matt Mason. The crew that goes up to eventually, bring Queen Marlena up to Eternia, whatever that whole like 60s space race stuff, Mars Attacks, etc. So that's cool. Like those references are there, but just like with AWOC, that's not what it's all about, right? So it's very much new IP. So shout out to that, folks. Shout out to the indies, the toy makers, and the folks making new things for the next generation, that we don't have to have a bunch of old dudes arguing about how like it's not as good as the original. Like let's just take that out. Let's go new. Let's hear new things. So real quick, I want to move on, but this is the military green. Okay. I love the visual language. This is science blue, right? And then I think I get into some zombies real quick, but again, was a military dude, presumably. No spoilers, because I don't know anything, but just because I'm a person who puts things together, that's a 90s Red Dust 2 spacesuit. And there's a zombie in it. So bummer. Then there's
spoiler alert. It doesn't end so well for everyone.
There's a science one, and I'm going to flip through so people understand the world. Then we get into the glow in the dark zombie variant that will be a exclusive to the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And if you make so many, because again, this is something you and I have talked about, but people need to understand the factory isn't down to do a short run. You're not going to do like, hey, do me 50 or 120 or 200 because backers bought it. We're talking more in the 4 digits plus.
Yeah.
So if you have any extras, they will be available only through you guys, maybe at conventions, maybe as giveaways. Yep. So check, move on. But dope figure,
This
glows
will
in the dark.
not be available from any online retailer unless we're selling it online, I guess. But
there you go. So it goes directly through them, and it's a glow in the dark, and potentially you're looking at it, maybe transparent, translucent plastics,
yeah, I think,
and you're figuring that out.
Think, if you do Mythic Legions, think of like Hagnon. If you do Super 7 Ultimates, think of like Ghost Jaga, where it's you're not going to be able to see through it. It's not a transparent figure, but it'll be translucent. The benefit of that is they actually pack the glow in the dark powder inside the plastic, so it can't rub off.
Right.
So there's actually sort of an added benefit of doing it that way rather than sort of painting on the glow in the dark finish.
Right. Fair enough.
And I'm pretty
in as much as I don't know like how often people are, I've have action figures and it's not like paint's always coming off, but still if it's in the plastic glow,
if it's baked in, it tends to last longer. So
so this is cool. And I will point out this is a spacesuit that does not look familiar compared to the other ones. This is maybe a Red Dust 1 spacesuit, but maybe something else. I'm gonna throw out there maybe something else, because I'm assuming if they're anything like our 60 space program, we didn't have jetpacks.
Yeah, there's elements that aren't quite, space race accurate.
Yeah, okay.
Like jetpacks and missions to Mars. No one made it there yet. So.
You all can explain that to us later as the story unfolds, but I think those are great just teasers of like, wait, what's with the big, round aquarium thing?
The fishbowl.
More in the realm of like sci-fi.
Yes.
So what's going on here? And let's just leave that as a question mark, as a tease. Speaking of, you mentioned Spike Spectre. Alliteration is the vibe. Fun fact, folks, think of your favorite characters, especially Marvel or DC, and just have fun trying to brainstorm all the alliterative characters as you can. You can go Peter Parker, you can go Lois Lane, you can go Clark Kent, and so on and so on. Now, Spike Spectre. You mentioned that he was in Red Dust 1.
Yes.
Am I looking at, can you tell me, is this what he looks like in the 90s?
I could tell you.
Okay.
But I won't.
That's fine. Okay. Fair enough. Keep that in mind, folks, because 30 years
This is what he looked like when he left.
I was going to say 30 years have passed.
But nobody's seen him since he left.
Okay. So just throwing that out there. I think the head sculpt is fantastic. And I kind of glossed over the other ones. Beautiful stuff. If you're familiar with Arlen's work, we should name that he's worked on, a bunch of Hasbro figures, Marvel Legends, G.I. Joe Classified. He does excellent fate. Yep.
Monster
and then
Force
now Monster Force and all the Fresh Monkey Fiction stuff, including Naughty. I was going to say Naughty by Nature. Naughty or Nice. But if you look at all those head sculpts, sorry, Arlen, except maybe the question marks people had about those kids. But maybe he was stuck in the zombie modes again. Sorry,
you know what?
I don't mean.
So I've seen some of the renders in physical form.
I'm sure they look
for
so
like
good,
heads that he's done, obviously.
Yeah.
And I've seen renders where I was like, I don't know, and then I see the physical thing like painted, and I'm like,
yes,
oh yeah, okay, that looks really good. It just doesn't translate very well in 2D. So
100%.
I will say though,
keep that in mind.
Just a little bit of an update on Spike Spectre. That render is a little bit off. So he is more
hold it.
He looks healthier than he does in that render in real life.
Oh, okay. I was wondering about the skin tone, if maybe that was a story thing.
No,
but you know what?
It's just a render that's a little bit off.
Could you bring him forward a little bit? Because I think the most important detail is the sideburns. So they're still there.
Yeah.
Rest assured, breathe easy. They didn't take rid of the sideburns.
And the eyebrows too.
Yeah, for sure. That's the paint master.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to send to the factory. Very cool. So it's less of the sickly gray. I wondered about that because he does look
Yeah.
a little bit on the gray side. So he does have an earth pallor to him then. Okay. And the sun does burn hot on Mars. But here you
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
This is one, folks. This is at this point and forward, these are all unlocks. So we need you to hurry up and back this thing so that I can selfishly get my hands on Spike Spectre. I know. I mean, he's the villain. He's the he's
It's
the
pretty
villain.
obvious, right? Like as soon as you see him, pretty
he's
obvious.
coded that way for sure. That is cool. Oh, so it's a helmet that goes on top of the head.
It's
sculpt.
a helmet, yeah. So this helmet will fit on Spike Spectre and at least one other head.
Nice. Yeah. At least one other head, he says. Okay. So that's this thing down here. An interesting nerdy note. This guy, Adam, has talked about it being a mask, but he was corrected by Arlen.
Mm-hmm.
Arlen saying it's a crown.
Mm-hmm.
Take from that.
And then in reality, it's actually a helmet. So I don't know. We're all right, I guess. That's not
a crown. A king of what?
It is. It factors very heavily into the lore. I will say that much.
Okay. Can I ask you this? So he's pulling he being Arlen and Ira. I know Ira has crowned himself the keeper of the lore. Is that what it was?
The lore master.
The lore master.
Yeah,
that's even better. He needs to say that with a British accent. But the lore master. What I'm looking at here is 60s ray guns, right? What else did I notice? Am I imagining that there was a sword at one point?
I don't remember there being a sword.
Okay, that's fine. Ignore that.
There's the knife. He's got a knife.
Yeah. And I'm assuming this fits in here, so that's what we're talking: weapons storage and all the like nerdy action figure things that people want to learn. Okay, great.
He's got the pistol holster on his hip and then the knife sheath on his belt.
Great accessories, great design. We've got the jetpack that'll go on his back, and then we've got this that's sort of like a clamshell front and back, and then in. Yeah, beautiful, just like Lego. So I think that's all cool. I guess what I was going with this is how much are you drawing from other existing fiction, whether it's about Mars or about space? Like you've already kind of said in the past, on past videos, that like a lot of our pop culture around 60s space stuff and zombies somehow makes its way into the reality of this world. So I'm just curious, how could you answer if you're pulling on other things that we're familiar with, stories that we're familiar with? You can be as vague as you want.
Well, I mean, the reality is it's like we kind of already touched on, a lot of it's like zeitgeisty stuff. Like it's not it's not like,
so it's more of an informal thing.
Yeah, it's not. It's less. So I enjoy cooking, but I never use a recipe. Whereas my wife enjoys baking, which you can't do if you don't use a recipe. It's a lot more like cooking in that way, where it's like there's a lot of things that came in without really being like, oh, we need a pinch of this and a teaspoon of this, and it was more like, Arlen's initial idea for this whole thing was the image, and we can't, like, he and I have tried to like think of the exact example of this, but we both had this image in our head of the astronaut with a cracked shield and just a skull face just floating endlessly in space. And I was like, is that from what's that from?
You're trying
and he's
to
like, I don't
imagine
know. It's just, and I was like, I think I've seen an album cover like that. Somebody was like, there's a video game that has that as sort of an iconic thing. Somebody referenced something from Doctor Who. Like everybody sort of has some of these ideas in their head based on some other, IP. And it really is like just things that we know being sort of reimagined through, the design lens that Arlen wants. I know that people want like, where did this detail come from? And really, there it
Yeah.
just isn't there. Like that's just that's just not how Arlen's brain works.
That's beautiful. That's good to know. It actually gives us some
Mhm.
insight into both the creative process and the style. This is the Red Walker variant that again is not will be unlocked.
Yeah.
If and when we get there. If people are wondering about the shadows, these are all things that are also as more money gets into the coffers.
Yeah.
These will also be unlocked. And again, I'll just save that for folks to look at the details, but I just want to give them a good look at these.
Mhm.
Now, white suits indicates medical.
Yeah.
So far we have military, science, baddies in red.
Yeah.
And then, okay, great. This is like my favorite. It's super iconic, is exactly what you just explained, right? The
Yeah.
idea of them floating through space. It's just really cool. I'm in love with this helmet. I mean, this head.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, and that
last
jaw
faction.
articulates as well.
Ooh, all right. And then the last faction is orange. The last faction is orange. Hello, back.
Unlock me.
Space zombies now.
Yeah. Very
that looks
cool.
rad. So we got Georgia McBride. So Georgia, I gotta ask: is this Georgia? Is this Georgia? This is Georgia, right?
With the glass, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So this is just so folks, if you want to army build, if you want to build other people who could potentially be turned into zombies, they're going to give you alt heads. You might want to buy 2 so you can have an extra body.
Yeah, for 3 of the 4 astronauts, there's an alternate head. And
here too.
Or sorry, for all of the astronauts, there's actually alt heads.
Right, but there's the same character versus additional people.
So Guy Garrison comes with sort of an army builder masked head.
So I assume that was him, but it's not.
No.
an
So that's
army
not meant to
builder.
be him. And when you see it up close, the eyes are a little bit different.
Okay.
And then so Julia Stryker comes with a male head sculpt.
Got it.
Dr. Michael Locke comes with a female head sculpt, and then George McBride comes with a male head sculpt. So you get
sorry, Dr. Michael Locke.
Yeah.
Great. So the potential of building a crew of 7 with a bunch of nameless people with masks on, as you want to add in if you get a bunch of Guy Garrison military troops. Cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, before I get too far from it, because it was a super chat, it was a funny comment. This guy could be the person to make the biggest army. So Travis, it's up to you. I just want to throw out there that 11 times 11 is 121, which is the number of Guy Garrisons you need to get so that you have Guy and 111 of his troops behind him. But he wants to say Mars orbits the sun in 687 days, roughly 1.88 Earth years. If you dividing by 62 gives 11.1, tying the number 11 to the Martian cycle, perhaps a sign of cosmic events repeating every 11 years, says backer number 11. There you go. You can't buy that kind of fandom.
He punched a bunch of numbers into AI and tried to figure out when we would launch.
Love you, Travis.
And it was totally wrong anyway.
Tuesday nights, Toyly takeover over on the Action Figs, AKXION Figs channel. Please go check out Travis. He's awesome. Okay. This is exactly where I was going, Largo. You and I are on the same page. Do these words mean anything to you?
I do know. Yeah, I do know John Carter. I don't know what Barsoom is though.
That is the
actual planet, the
indigenous Martian
term
for Mars. So these are all really cool, but this is a great question. Are there any thoughts on maybe non-spacesuit figs for characters in future waves, knowing that you gotta
Yes, absolutely. There is. I was looking at renders today for a non-spacesuit figure.
Very cool.
And this buck, everybody sort of bemoans companies that reuse bucks. We intend to use this buck for other purposes as well that are non-astronauts, and then have other bucks going forward for other lines, other waves. The backpack is even sculpted and molded modularly. It's not
Oh,
one chunk. So there's actually the potential to use pieces of that backpack for other things going forward. I guess to answer
before
the
you,
question,
sorry,
we have
let me
every
pause you.
intention of doing multiple lines, multiple
Okay.
waves. So yeah.
You got my brain going. So am I hearing that they're modular, but I'm assuming you're going to glue them
Oh
before you
yeah,
get into people's
sorry.
hands?
It's sculpted and fabricated in
Mhm.
multiple more than one
Pieces.
piece. But it will be one sort of
Got it.
I don't I
Glued.
yeah, it'll be pretty hard to like break it
Yeah,
apart.
but the idea is that so that you as the Nameless Toy Company can reuse those parts for other things. And
Yeah.
can I just say, Arlen, his sculpts, and you know this, people know this, but the level of detail
Mhm,
on them is fantastic. And
mhm,
hearing from him that, like, like his journey. I'm
mhm,
trying to remember who that would have been on Toilet Takeover on the Action Figs channel, where you all broke that down, and he was there and kind of talked about his journey. It's amazing to know that, like, yeah, I just started doing this, and this is what I
mhm,
do, and that is, I love it. But anyway, all these details I think could work on a couple different lines.
mhm.
On that note, there's this piece, and you've said it, but think about. I've always wondered about this. Is it even legal or potentially problematic to put your figures next to other people's figures? Because it feels a little potentially dicey if one of those companies says, "Hey, why are you using my figures to advertise your thing?"
Yeah, I don't know the exact legality of it.
Mhm.
We will have an update that has a comparison photo.
Okay.
I think it gets dangerous when you put it in like your campaign page because then
Mhm.
they could suggest that you're using their figures to sell
Right.
your figures and sort of
Right.
kind of falsely um
Associate.
even though you're like obviously not, you're sort of falsely associating yourself with their product.
Yep.
They will be classified size though. I can tell you that it's
Okay.
100% we're using sort of classified and Monster Force and Action Force as the sort of size standard that this line will follow. So they will be smaller than say the Super 7 2001 figures. Um, they'll be smaller than Cosmic Legions, but not far off. I mean, I guess how much do you sort of fudge that in your own collection already?
Yeah.
But
But I think you're right. You're right to name that, like, yeah, just if you've ever picked up a Monster Force figure, folks, and you put it side by side next to a classified, it's like they could be,
they're
just
virtually
right there
identical.
together.
Yeah.
And knowing that Arlen works on those,
Mhm.
and I think that's a good sign. And I will say it's tricky to say this, but knowing those figures that he's worked on, you can also get a good sense of the quality of these things as well,
Mhm.
even though you all will have much more control, of course,
Mhm.
over that. Okay, so those are the figures we've shown them. We've talked a little bit about the comic book, which will be coming out. Is this a one shot, as someone asked, and I didn't star it, but is it a one shot or is
Mhm.
it meant to be an ongoing series? What's the thought on that? Pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
it's intended to be a one shot, but the sort of the agreement that we kind of have decided on is that if we do another line or if we do another big wave, we'd probably do another comic if it was
Got
relevant
it.
to sort of
Mhm.
again, you don't want to just throw figures out there and have no lore behind it. So
Mhm.
um we'll see how successful this is, and we'll see how well the Kickstarter goes and how well the comic book gets supported. And then it's sort of one of those things where enough people love the comic book, then we'll be forced to do the next one.
Yep. Uh, great ideas here. Adam didn't see this, so that's not at all something that they're going to do based on those suggestions, but it could work. And I just want to point this out. This is presumably a 80s retrospective on the Red Dust one. So is Silk
No,
Spectre? Oh, it's not. Okay, tell me
no.
more.
So this is actually the leaders of Red Dust 2. So this is like this is the equivalent in this sort of world of like
Oh,
Times
okay.
magazine.
Never mind. Because I
Um,
seen, was that 80s?
I don't know what it says. I'll be honest, I don't know what it
Anyways,
says.
that's fine. Got it.
Um,
So this is celebrating what's about to
this is
happen.
the four astronauts that you get. So that's Guy Garrison
Gotcha.
on the right,
Oh,
and then next
yeah,
to
yeah.
him is Michael Locke, and then
The
Julia
doctor.
Stryker and in the front, in front and center there is Georgia McBride.
Got it. Very cool. So comic is coming to tell the story, but finally what I want to get to is that you all, like, this whole thing started because of a music project. Is that right? Like by a band called Prometheus, or sort of it came all together? Can you break that down?
So like I said, Arlen had the idea of the astronaut floating in space, which you see in the label for the record right there. That was sort of the initial idea, and that was sort of the initial impetus. And then Arlen and Ira got together one evening with the intention of like, you know, they'd started a band, just the two of them. They had an idea for sort of what kind of music they wanted to do. But they got together one night, and Arlen had just gotten a puppy. It's a little pug, and the pug fell asleep on Ira before they could start playing. And so they were just kind of like stuck, because you can't wake up a sleeping puppy. And so they were sort of got into like, well, okay, what are we going to do for the music? And you know, Ira was like, well, what are you up to? What have you been doing? And Arlen said, you know, I got this design for this astronaut with a skull. And Ira was like, that's super cool. And then that night they kind of mapped out, you know, the story for Space Zombies from Mars. So that's where it went from, you know, that astronaut to zombies and astronauts and a mission, and you know, so on and so forth. And then Ira said, well, what if the music that we make is the soundtrack for the toy line?
Yep, that's cool.
And so it'll create a soundscape for this universe. And
at that point, it's not necessarily when he said for the toy line. I mean, I don't know. Was there a toy line at that point, or like this kind of like a what if this is the world? Let's create our music with this notion in mind that we're creating a soundtrack. Or did they already say, I'm going to do a toy line?
Well, so Arlen as a sculptor had always sort of wanted to do his own toy line.
Okay.
So he had started working on the designs.
Got it.
And so he was showing Ira the designs, and Ira was saying like, let's, you know, when you sort of hear the music, you kind of go, oh yeah, it makes sense. You've heard some of it. So you kind of, oh yeah, okay, I get it. You know, space and science fiction and stuff like that. The music that they made fit this astronauts in space kind of thing.
Got it. Okay.
And so it all just sort of organically, you know, every bit of the conversation kind of organically led to the next bit. So they came up with the lore, and you know, over the course of the next year and a half, they came up with the soundtrack, and they kind of came up with the full sort of story. Arlen would be like, hey, I designed another character. We need to sort of fit this into the lore, and here's how we can do it.
Love it.
So it was, yeah, it's all kind of one thing. Like we couldn't really do just the toys, because the sound that they've already done the soundtrack, and they already have the story to do the comic book. So we're not even looking at, you know, the comic book as though, okay, once we fund, we'll have to do a comic book.
Yeah.
Like I've read the script, you know, it's the equivalent of like, okay, we just need to find the actors in this case, you know, if it was a movie script.
I think
we
it's
just
so
need the
cool,
artist.
man.
So yeah, it's just really, it's just been a very, and that's, you know, that's what they've been working with musically. If anybody's curious,
the analog synths, and they're sitting there with patch cables and just going to town, and there is video. So this is the Prometheus, the band, Instagram, and you can kind of see them doing their thing, you know, kind of like playing with patch cables, messing around with sounds. But when I spoke with you, I was like, dude, that's great. It started with an idea that eventually spawned a band, and like they're basically creating like a concept album, right? A concept record, which drives the ideas, the sound. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm hearing like whatever, I know it's like the 60s thing. So I'm hearing like a lot of delays and echoes and like, you know, space.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hearing radio transmissions and all that stuff. But I'm like, okay, but it's music. So I need to hear the music. So on that note, let's hear a little bit right now. And that wasn't it. Let's go in here. Let's check it out. This is what I meant to do. I think. Yeah, this one. Maybe. I'm gonna go back, and here we go. Come on, play from the beginning, buddy. I was trying to be slick, but
I'll say
the
this while
slickness came out.
you're sort of sorting that out. I've had this soundtrack like I've had it in my computer since like before it was mixed. And I was listening to it while I was doing the Kickstarter and while I was like getting all the images together and while we were sort of working on everything. So like I now know these songs.
Yeah.
And you know the masters just came back, so like what we're listening to now are going to be the masters. And the masters are like so much better than what I'd been listening to up until last week. And now they have like this whole new life because we've been talking more, but like now that we're talking about it, you know, kind of openly, and like we're talking about the lore and we're, you know, it just feels so much more real, and it just feels like the sounds make more sense when you think about the lore, and when you sort of see the characters and you see all the renders and all that kind of stuff. So the music isn't for everybody. It's not you know, it's not going to be a #1 hit. We're not going to win any Grammys or anything like that. But I think it's pretty fun, and I think it fits what, you know, everything else is. Like it
I
fits
feel
with
like you're selling
everything.
it short. And as a person who was in a band for 10 years that did instrumental indie rock and had music samples, we would say that all the time. Like, it's not for everyone. And then people would hear it and they'd be like, oh, this is dope. It's definitely left of center, if you will. It's like,
Oh yeah,
it's cool stuff. So here's the thing. They got to hear it. So I think I got it figured out. Maybe.
Yeah. So good, right?
So apologies to Ira and Arlen. This is what happens when you're not here. The show person takes liberties and makes some edits. So
No, I'm
I tried
stealing that though. I'm gonna share that
Okay.
too.
Okay,
So
because I was like, I need to make some edits so we can get to like the groove pretty quickly and hear it. But it's cool. I've been able to hear 2 tracks now. I was tempted to like, you know, show both of them, but I won't, because there's stuff that you need to say for other stuff, but
yeah.
other shows. But the music is really good. So like after listening, it's definitely in line with some of the stuff that I love to make in terms of music. It reminds me of like some DJ Shadow stuff, some, you know, some real noisy stuff too, a little bit of like Industrial Ministry. I'm trying to think of things that folks would be familiar with. San Francisco, fun fact, where I live, is very much has a history of noisecore, and there's some of that in there.
There definitely is, yeah. Yeah,
But am I right?
There's a pretty wide variety too, though. Like from you know, from the really noisy stuff to more melodic stuff. And then if you watched my video earlier today, you might have heard something at the end of that video.
I was going to ask you about the country at the end.
Yeah, so there's one particular track that it's like if you kind of are more of like a, you know, radio type music, there's like one track that you'll still be able to kind of listen to. But even that one's kind of twisted and kind of chopped, and yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah, man. I think it just adds a really cool component because, you know, one, obviously it's part of the genesis of the story and everything. And it helps tell the story, and like people can kind of enjoy it all together. I'm one of those Star Wars nerds who did like to listen to music or would put on like the John Williams soundtrack while I was looking at comic books or reading the books. And then now that we're in the age of the audiobooks, the Star Wars books are like beautiful because of some of the production stuff.
That, yeah.
So that this is cool. And, you know, given the resources people have, there's a DIY-ness too about music, you know, like, hey, let's just get in, let's talk about it, let's just start putting patch cables in. And I think I'm excited about that aspect a ton. So I think that is kind of what I have for Space Zombies. Let's go ahead and do some Q&A with folks, and then let's quickly talk about what we've looked at from Toy Fair. If we have time, we'll see.
Yeah. Was there other stuff going on this weekend? Not just this? Not just our Kickstarter?
No, I think there's pretty much just the one Kickstarter. I know, which is such a tangled thing. I was like, I don't want to take thunder away from the
no, it's
campaign,
hard.
But
honestly,
you did the same thing today.
And honestly, like this is, you hear about Kickstarters that delay, or Kickstarters that are like, oh, I'm just waiting for this thing to end, or like what. We set March 1st, and we said, you know what, whatever happens, we're launching March 1st. Like, we didn't check what was on. We didn't check the Toy Fair was this weekend. We know there's a dragon that people are going to want to buy.
I was going to say, I tried to warn you, but okay.
No, I mean, there's never a good time. There's so many cool toys. There's so much cool stuff out there right now, whether that's, the big guys, whether that's the indie guys.
Yes.
There's no good time because there's so much competition. And so to that point, like we appreciate any support, whether, like I said before, like whether it's sharing a post, texting a friend, sharing the link, whatever it may be, having us on a video to sort of reach an audience that we might not be able to reach on our own. Because this is, we are indie. I mean, we're 3 Canadian dudes just trying to make some cool stuff. And if enough people agree that it's cool and want to support it financially, we'll make even more cool stuff. So
yeah, well, Seth thinks they're very cool, and there's a ton of creativity, which is how I started the show, man. I really think that everything that's going on behind it is awesome. And let's talk about some questions. Jedi Nut would love to know, so looking forward to this line, is Fresh Monkey Fiction involved, or am I thinking of something else? Can you just help clarify that in people's minds?
Yeah, absolutely. The sort of toy making community is very small. It's much smaller than people realize. Bill from Fresh Monkey Fiction is a very, very good friend of Arlen's. Arlen has worked with Bill a ton. We are in no way related or involved with Fresh Monkey Fiction for what we're doing with the Nameless Toy Company.
Yeah. What
I will say is there are connections between, what Bill does and what we do. And, going beyond that, I will say, like, Jason from Spiro Toys did the logo. Jason did the paint masters for the astronaut suits. So there's not that many people making toys, but everybody is kind of involved with everybody else's project and trying to support them. And like, hey, what about this? Have you thought about doing this? Can I help in any way? Can I promote this? Can I share it? Can I, what are you going to do for the next wave? And Arlen, has done Naughty or Nice, which is a Fresh Monkey Fiction line. That's like Arlen top to bottom sculpting, including the sleigh. Arlen actually sculpted that whole sleigh, which is, scheduled for next year. Arlen did the Krampus and the Santa.
I love
that
spirit of
Nutcracker and
love the spirit of creativity, but also collaboration, right? And
yeah,
this is what you and I talk a lot about with indie toys, that like it really is a matter of if they choose to realize that there are massive corporations who are very comfortable being the only kids on the block making toys, it behooves the indie toy makers and fans to be supportive of one another. And as a result, you have people like Arlen. This is Arlen's page, by the way. But as you pointed out, it's a small industry. And so he's worked with the Fresh Monkey Fiction folks. He's also worked with, so you can kind of see some of the other things that he's worked on here, including, some Hasbro figures. So like he's a working sculptor and has worked with a bunch of folks, as has, Dan and the other person who's had their hand on Animal Warriors of the Kingdom stuff. So it's like, so I hope that clarifies. They're not at all related, but that said, they are very much interactive. Again, we talked about how Jason from Animal Warriors of the Kingdom did this logo. He's helping with some of the paint masters. So if you are a toy fan, consider all of that, and support where you can, and realize that it's a dope community. Okay. So that clarifies that. These figures kind of remind Justin of the video of Next Year by Foo Fighters. Don't know if folks are familiar, but
I'll have to go watch
Cool.
it. I love Foo Fighters videos. But...
I love Foo Fighters too, and the music videos. Brian Brink, question for later. Does the retailer, knowing what factory you're using, give them any peace of mind for their investment for this idea of like sort of pre-ordering, putting in their order before the Kickstarter finishes?
I think it's a combination of factors. The factory is well known. It's at the bottom of our Kickstarter there that we're working with Chris Garwich, who's well known for Mythic Legions and his own D13 line. We are using the factory that made the Monster Force figures. And people know Arlen. I mean, people who sort of know who makes the toys know that Arlen makes really good toys. This, again, Toy Collector Magazine, this wouldn't have happened if people didn't sort of believe that what we intend to do is going to be good. Toy Collector Magazine looks dumb if we put out crappy toys because they put us on the cover. I think it's the only Kickstarter that they've had on their cover. They've had kind of pre-order stuff and reveals, but not anything from a company that that time didn't exist. Like, we didn't even have a toy company when they were like, oh yeah, we're going to put you on the cover. We were like, this just got real fast.
I'll just quickly say about this toy. You mentioned that the crown / helmet fits on two heads. This is not on the same head that we were looking at earlier.
Oh, it isn't? Yeah, you might be right.
So anyway,
that might be on this head.
Oh,
that wasn't me. I promised Ray Paz a reveal.
Oh, man. What am I looking at? Don't tell me. Actually, keep the mystery, but it looks rad.
So in that Toy Collector Magazine cover, that is the head that wears the crown.
Heavy's the head that wears a crown. Love it. Let's see.
I was actually going to show you something else, but that actually segued into that. So that's...
Josh is saying BBTS needs to create a platform without the cut. So just a comment about the whole huge conversation earlier, and I thought about this as well. But they may want part ownership, and they've done that essentially, right? They
that's kind of the way they've gone with Monster Force.
And I was going to say with Monster Force, and then Fresh Monkey Fiction, which is a completely separate entity from Big Bad. Any connections there? Overlap?
Well, there's definitely connections. Yeah, Bill and the Big Bad Toy Store guys know each other very well. And, and like I said, because they have like Big Bad Studios, which currently has Fresh Monkey Fiction product, there is sort of a business relationship there. And what I will say is, Fresh Monkey Fiction, partnering with Big Bad Toy Store to do Big Bad Studio or whatever it's called. I don't know the exact sort of details, but it is effectively a sort of pre-order that turns into a production thing. But my understanding is that, the profits and sort of the ownership of the IP is somewhat shared. I don't know the exact details of any of it.
That's fine. That's fine. We don't.
But when Arlen got me on board, it was really with the intention of him having his own company that was a Canadian company, which is specifically why I was involved. I'm very underqualified for this, but I am Canadian, so I guess that was it was a low threshold.
How about this? Speaking of inhabiting, you said inhabiting earlier, and we got there. And but are there any future plans for a world? So future diorama bits or ship and habitat ruins and bric-a-brac, world building type stuff?
Yeah, there are no definitive plans for anything like that. What I will say is we have chatted about, what would we want to add to this world to sort of build the world out from figures. And so I can say that we would love to, if it made sense and if we could figure out how to do it, and financially it would be viable,
Sure.
let alone profitable. I mean, you got to break even before before you're gonna sort of like go and do
Right.
it. Um,
You got to launch the first wave of figures
you
first
got to
as
launch
well.
the first wave of figures
So-
first. Yeah.
So it's not a no. Sounds like a good idea. And,
No,
and
it's
you know, of course,
it,
yeah.
it's a tough one because like I was somebody asked and so I answered. Making toys is expensive. Just for reference, this buck to make this, just the body for the figure, it's about
Yeah.
$80,000.
Whew.
And that's not sculpting, that's not production, that's not, getting the prototypes done. That's like literally to pay the factory to cut the steel molds to make the body. It's like
Mhm.
$80,000. You don't
Right.
hear the numbers very often. You just hear it's expensive. It's expensive.
Yeah.
So then to sort of cut molds for a wall, um, you know, how many of those walls are you gonna sell? Oh, you want to make a vehicle. Okay, well, how many molds does it take to make the vehicle? How big is the vehicle? So on and so forth. It like the cost is staggering. And then you look at you look across sort of the toy landscape, and you're like, well, how come the Walmart brand is making these $30 sets or whatever?
Yeah.
It's because they make one mold and then they paint it 30 times and they sell millions of units over the
It's a
course of
scale.
10
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And it's just the scale. Nobody
Yeah.
cares about the sculpt because it's for like 5-year-old kids. So it's like the
Right.
sculpt is weird, the scale is weird, and customizers kind of make things work.
Yeah.
Customizers are geniuses because they take parts that shouldn't be something and turn them into something else. And people
Yep.
go like, I never would have thought of that. Because usually they're using something that wasn't intended to be used that way. It's really cost prohibitive to do that. Now, there are people that like what we do is dioramas, what we do is vehicles.
Sure.
You look at
Mhm.
companies that make, whether it's like an RC car or like a playset company. But ultimately, like a lot of people kind of stick to their lane. Right now, our lane is action figures. If we
Yeah.
can widen that lane, or if we can find, an off ramp that leads us to, vehicles or playsets, maybe. But again, like there's a good example. You got an Extreme Sets cardboard floor behind that action figure.
Yeah.
Um, there's already
And it
people
looks
that
great.
make playsets
Yeah.
to sort of different degrees, and so again, it's sort of like, well, how many would we sell? If you sell 1,000 figures, right? Say we sell 1,000 of that figure. How many of those 1,000 people that bought that figure?
Yep.
Let's say it's 100, because then it's percentage is easier. Let's say you sell 100 of these to 100 different people. They all only buy one, because again, that's easier math. How many of those are going to buy a playset to go with this figure?
Right.
Is it 10? Is it 50? Because I don't think it's not 100 of 100 people. Because
Well,
you're going
I'll
to have some of
say,
them that are probably doing their own foam stuff. There's people that
yep.
already have stuff. Oh, I already have like a space station diode that these would be perfect for. So you
Yep.
kind of look at it through that lens, and you have to decide, okay, is this something that the market needs? And we felt the market needed astronauts and zombies. We're not 100% sure that it needs, Martian vehicles yet, but maybe.
Mhm. And that's where at the end of the day, we got to build that market, right? We got to, we being fans, like if you're into
Mhm.
this, support.
Yeah.
There's like 140 some folks. We need to get more than that to get that money in there. I
Mhm.
heard $80,000 to do the steel, to cut steel, and I know that you're. I'm assuming that's U.S. And if that's the
That's US,
case,
yeah.
then folks, keep in mind that they're asking for $120,000. So consider the time put in already. That's all sweat equity, right? The sculpting, that's all quote unquote free, essentially, right? And the music has been produced, all of that stuff. I mean, it's going to get paid for, but so folks need to support. We definitely need to support and let folks know this is just the beginning. This is day one-ish. Day two-ish of the campaign. Can you then, before we head out, we can say, Toy Fair and all that other stuff, whatever. Let's just talk about, give them a sense of like what's coming next. Where's your next 3 shows, let's say, where they can ask you a little bit more questions? Because I know folks have questions. There are 2 questions we didn't get to, but unfortunately, I think it's about that time. So what are where can folks see you again to ask you questions?
So the next show that we're doing is actually tomorrow. We are doing Geek Men Masters of the Thunder Nerds at 7:30 p.m. And then on Tuesday we're actually doing Toy Migos, so that should be a big one.
Nice.
And then on Friday we've got Infinity Equation at 6 p.m.
Very cool.
And then I've got March 8th, 9th, 10th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 18th, 20th. Like you'll see us.
Okay, so let's do this. I have that URL at the bottom as usual. And on the right side, you'll see a QR code in a second. Use that. And I will ask Adam to send me those links to those shows, whichever ones exist, and or even just the text schedule. And you can go there and see the entire list and look for those. Hit up Adam. And then Ira and Arlen, I know, are super busy, but they're going to pop into some of those, presumably.
Hopefully.
But it's harder to sort of figure that out.
They have kind of tighter time constraints, just with, their schedules and their families and stuff like that. So I am sort of lucky enough to have a wife who is generous enough and gracious enough to sort of give me way too much time to do this.
Yeah, let's just say that this comment applies to that comment as well.
Yeah.
And then so take a look at that. I heard Tuesday at Toy Migos. I wasn't familiar with the first one. Friday's Infinity Equation. You said Grown Men Masters.
Geek Men Masters of the Thunder Nerds.
And I need to know this. Geek Men Masters of the Thunder Nerds. That sounds right up my alley.
They've had Brian Flynn on there. I think Cornboy might have been on there too. Like they've had some people come through.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you can find out all about these awesome action figures, folks, from my pitch, from my channel. Like the indie toy thing is where it's at as far as I'm concerned. All the other stuff is fantastic. The stuff that we didn't get to at Toy Fair, like, of course, more G.I. Joe, more Thundercats, more, what else did we see? Some Conan stuff, some Frazetta stuff that was revealed, some death dealers. So like there's that stuff out there for sure that exists. But shout out to the creativity of you all, and Arlen and Ira for making new music with new stories, putting new things in the world. That's where it's at. So I love to push that stuff here. So check out the Kickstarter, folks. Again, that URL was what I shared earlier, but if you go to bit.ly/back space zombies, it'll take you here, back for some figures. And there really is no reason. You say this, and I like to tell people this. There's no reason not to back it if you're even remotely thinking about this. There's only good reasons to do it, which is if we don't get the interest logged in officially as backing numbers, this thing doesn't move forward. So even if you're thinking about it, I will say that they don't collect anything until the thing is actually backed and on the end of the Kickstarter. So even if right now I put in, my money or my backing pledge, really nothing is going to be going from my credit card until April 1st. Yeah. So folks, do that. And I'll put in one last plug. If you're in the LA or Orange County area on March 27th, 28th, and 29th, towards the end of the campaign, and you would like to either see an incredibly
28th,
related
29th, 30th.
Sorry, 28th, 29th, 30th. and would love to see an incredibly elated Adam Drake or a nervous Nelly Adam Drake, come see him at WonderCon in Anaheim at the Anaheim Convention Center. Maybe do Disney after, so you can spend money at the convention than whatever you have left. But you and I are going to be there. We're going to be hanging out. We're going to be slanging some Spiro toys, Animal Warriors of the Kingdom to the folks. But will there be any possibility of them seeing some things from Space Zombies at the table?
I'm going to bring a couple of the paint masters. If
you want to see this stuff in person, come by, talk to Adam, ask him all the questions, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely.
But let's go ahead and close out, man. It's Sunday. You and I both have to work our real jobs tomorrow, and I'm going to try and enjoy what's left of the sun. I hope you get some up there too. Congratulations, for real. Like, congratulations, regardless of like where you're feeling about this thing right now. One, it's going to back, but two, it's like you guys are putting some good stuff out in the world. That's to me at least the victory here. So take a breath.
No, we're feeling good. I mean, I'm confident. I think we were up against a whole lot of news and a whole lot of noise this weekend. So I'm confident that we can sort of keep doing these videos, keep getting eyes on the project, keep getting eyes on the campaign, and just keep moving forward. So that's and then just sort of smash through all the stretch goals and have people asking us like, well, what else? Like, we've gone way past the stretch goals. What's next?
Where's wave 3? Where's
nothing?
Wave 4?
Just wait. Let us make these first.
I love it. And Amanda, would love for you to know that if you go to WonderCon, again, Anaheim Convention Center, you may also get to meet his lovely wife and can thank her in real life through Zelle, Venmo, or cash. All right. So folks are excited, so I think y'all are in a really good place. Have a great weekend. Before folks go, I will say this. If you like Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, I'm going to put in a URL right now, and I'll put that up on the screen. At 6 p.m. or in 26 minutes from now, they're doing a live show over at Vaz Zone. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Adam, but they both have customized. They're a couple who are like, maybe we create some marital tension today. You get to vote in the live stream on whose custom Animal Warriors of the Kingdom figure you like best. And then they are actually going to give away the figure. So check that out. He says, thank you for potentially creating marital drama. But go check that out. Or they do. I don't know who's behind there, but go check out, go check them out. Adrian and Tiffany. And so anyway, Adam, always good to hang out and talk toys, because you're as much of a dork as I am. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Space Zombies from Mars. Check that out. Let me play some music. And you know how this works. Awkward thing. And yay. Good job.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Make funny voices. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Zombie.